Hey guys, I want to shoot a quick video here of a head that I'm building for a guy up in Stuart, Florida. This is for a 496, or as some people know it as a 8.1 Vortec. It's off a Mercruiser, but Volvo used them as well. But let me get back on track. Basically, the only reason I'm shooting this video is for Bill, because I know not many other people are going to be viewing this. But this is the condition of the head. I've already cleaned it up a little bit. It had a little bit of funk in it from just being an engine and being dirty and sitting around in the shop. So I've got it relatively clean right now. It's in excellent condition. I'm going to try to stay on point here and not get so long-winded. Let me just turn it around. But when I say clean, this is not the final clean. This is like the pre-valve job cleaning. In other words, just to get it clean enough to start doing the valve seating and the lapping and whatnot. This engine, before I forget, when I took it apart. Before I took it apart, I went across it with my mallet test. Oh man, I don't have a head here. Anyway, long story short, what I do is I go across each valve stem and pop it and to determine whether there are any stuck valves or any rusty valve guides and stuff like that, or possibly bent valves. When you do your tap test along the top, you don't do it with a metal hammer, you do it with a rubber hammer. And each one of these, it's like a drum. This thing, it'll jump open, and when it jumps open, most people know this, it'll make a little clapping sound. So I say all of that to say this: when I did a tap test on this head, it was fine. It didn't even really need to be built. It basically could have been surface cleaned, internally cleaned, bolted on the engine, and it would have been fine. It would have run. It really didn't even need to be built. However, some of the little valve stems were a little bit dry. So the seals, the stem seals, so we're getting new ones. There's the new ones. As we discussed earlier, these are going to be the 4 new intakes, the intake valves, SBI, basically OEM stuff. And it's really deceptive, because when I pulled this thing apart, I kind of saw this on the front end, and I'll get to this in a second, but it's really, if you look, I'm spinning this right now. I don't know if you can see it spin. The margin it's flawless. I mean, it's just awesome. And I've noticed this with a lot of the modern GM engines. When I say modern, past 95, 96, the machine work is phenomenal. And but what? Well, that one's not as clean. I did clean that one. But what's frustrating is this probably could fly, but I don't want to chance it. And if you see that, there's a little bit of pitting and corrosion there, just from moisture getting up in the heads. And if anybody knows me, I've got a real concern about moisture building up in these rocker assembly in the tops of the heads, because I'll pull rocker covers off, and after an engine has been running, and there's just a ton of moisture in there. I mean, a ton of moisture from a 454 or a 496 being down in a engine room, and all that heat and all the water and the moisture, etc., etc. So anyway, I'm almost of the school of thought that that's some of what's causing this internal rusting and pitting in some of these engines. So anyway, briefly, this will show you the condition of the engine. These are the actual spark plugs that were running in that head. So no overheating, nothing funky going on. So that's a really good sign, again, that it was just a really good head and didn't even really need any machine work. When I say no rust, I didn't find any rust buildup at all from moisture in the valve guides. So it really, really wasn't all that bad. Let me get it turned around here. I think I've already shown that a little bit, but that's relatively after running across it. When I mentioned to you earlier about a grinding wheel, this is from Harbor Freight. Basically, I think this is for like a 4.5-inch grinder. They're $5 or $6, and they are phenomenal for cleaning the surface. You don't put a lot of pressure on it, but even if you did, you're not going to hurt anything. You're not going to harm any of the steel. You know, here's the surface side of all the exhaust ports. I'll say they're a 9.5 out of 10. They're gonna seal fine. There's nothing wrong with them. If someone wanted to get really anal, they could take this to a machine shop. You could have that surfaced if you want to, but I'll tell you right now, it's a waste of time. It's in phenomenal shape. Again, I run across it with a grinder, and before you know, put your exhaust manifold on, once you clean it with acetone, it'll be a perfect seal. What else? One thing I did want to, let me see, bear with me while I get this turned around here. Where's the intake side? Okay. Keep in mind, when I was talking about the machining, now I've already put a little bit of oil on this valve. Let me just go around here and see if I can find it. So, in other words, don't ever put these in dry. And this is going to be hard to do, but this is where I was talking about. If you do that tap, you know, that tap, you'll hear it pop. I think we all know that. But the reason I want to show this video, if you look inside this, I'm going to turn the light so it's intentionally. I have not even done any. Okay, I haven't done any lapping or machine work at all. Okay, nothing. See, it's obviously open a little bit right there. You see the crescent moon. So on that note, from a machining standpoint, it's amazing what we're dealing with today in this day and age. Meaning that obviously I'm still going to lap it, but it doesn't need to be cut, you know, with a special tool or any sort of special shop work done. As we joked earlier, you know, it's kind of cowboy in some things, but basically what I'll do is I'll put, you know, the valve in there, oil up the stem, and then I'll put the lapping I usually just put the lapping compound on this edge surface right here. And believe it or not, I like the Permatex, just the basic stuff, the pink stuff. It's kind of coarse, but also there's the clover compound that I use. I'll finish with this, and I didn't get to mention that earlier. Yes, I'll use like a 1/2-inch Milwaukee drill with a 3/8 inch fuel line with a little stud in it, you know, and then obviously that keeps it flexible, and the 3/8 fuel line slips right over the valve stem perfectly. If it hangs a little, it'll spin, and nothing, you know, nothing gets hurt. So it's not like you're putting the valve in the chuck. And then what I'll do, and I'll do this in the morning. The reason I'm shooting this video is because it's almost 10 o'clock, and it's just turned into a real long day. So what I'll do is I'll show it all tomorrow, but basically I'll kind of hold a little pressure on it, and then I'll reverse it. But I didn't get to clarify earlier. I'll do the finish by hand, meaning, you know, we all know the little suction cup trick where you spin it like you're cleaning out a paintbrush. So my final step is to hand lap it. I don't rely on just the machine. But again, when I say lapping, I'll probably lap each valve maybe 15 seconds, maybe 20. There's no sense in trying to remachine the surface because, again, the General Motors machining is so good, it's so precise that it's just a joy, you know, to get to build these engines, because it's almost like just being on the assembly line. Quick note, what else? I'll chase the spark plug threads. I already have, but and they're good, so to verify that there's nothing there. Again, these 4 valves cannot be used. They could, I don't know why I'm saying that. They could be used, but I just don't want to chance it. Not when I get a pretty good price on parts here in South Florida. So for what it cost me, you know, just under 50 bucks, it was like $49.90 something for 4 valves. I mean, these, obviously these are not melanite. These are not the melanite coated, which, oh, I didn't even show the exhaust valves. Here are the exhaust valves. And they're just, now I've already cleaned them a little bit, but when you look at that, man, they came out of the engine just flawless. So anyway, with the melanite coating on all of the exhaust, and obviously it may not look like it, but there's a system to my madness here. When I pull a head apart, I always have the exhaust facing me. The exhaust port's facing me. And this right here is always going to be the bottom. The next one up, the next one up. In other words, this is the top. You know, so I keep this setting over here. I know for a fact that this one goes here. Okay, so I don't just throw them in a box and then stick them back in there. In other words, this came out of this location. Same thing. Those little soldiers are lined up. That's the top one. That one right there, if it were being reused, would go back in the top. But on that note, so in other words, they go back in their original location to where they were machined from the factory anyway, and it just assures that it's a cleaner build. So turned into a long video, sorry about that, but I think I covered a good bit of stuff that we didn't get to talk about today. First thing in the morning, I get back on this, knock this out, probably take me about 2 hours tops, and we'll go from there. I think that's it. Thanks, man. Call if you need. See ya.